Welcome to the Femsplainers. I'm Danielle Crittenden.
And I'm Christina Hoff-Summers.
You didn't do it the way I expected you to.
And I'm Christina
Hoff-Summers. And we are joined in the studio by Ella Ryder. Welcome, Ella.
Thank you.
Ella is going to be
our new Zoe.
Zoe's leaving us next week. It's a big mic to fill, Ella. But she's also equally young, so we're not losing the iGen
point of view,
thank goodness. You represent your entire generation of women, as you know. That's your role here.
And she's an NYU graduate, my alma mater.
I am, 2017.
What did you specialize in?
I did the liberal studies program. So it's a 4-year program, and then you are required to study abroad for a year. So I was in Shanghai.
You're in Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did you end up here at the American Enterprise Institute where we record and not serving coffee in a Starbucks? Because isn't that what the liberal arts degree preps you for?
Yeah, I started my thesis and I talked about free speech on college campuses, and I learned about Christina and Charles Murray and other scholars at AEI, and saw there was an internship. So I interned for Christina a couple years ago.
And yes, because you said Ella was so great.
Yeah.
So excited she's coming back.
And now she's going to be my research assistant as well. So watch out, world.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to become efficient.
I don't know if we can take an efficient Christina. You'll lose all your fun. No. You'll become me.
I know.
You don't want to become me, the carrying the whip. All right. Well, we have this is so exciting because we got word from our friend Molly Jong-Fast. Actually, you have not met her. I have met Molly Jong-Fast, who is, she's a writer, she's a journalist. She also runs a really popular Twitter feed. She's like one of these, I don't know, Twitter artists or something who get famous just for their Twitter feeds. And she's also the daughter of Erica Jong, the famous Fear of Flying 1970s
pro-sex feminist.
Sex feminist. And she's here in D.C. with her mother, and
so we have a mother-daughter team.
Right. She let me know she was coming in a couple of days ago, and I said, well, come on the show. So they're going to join us today in studio, which is amazing.
I can't imagine having Erica Jong as a mother. I mean, it would seem totally fun because she's so vivacious and
Although, but think of being a kid.
No, being a kid 70s. And in the 70s. Parents were not that attentive in the 70s anyway.
Yeah.
Let alone
having a single mother, married 4 times. I think Molly was the product of her third marriage,
and who's just a sensational figure out on the scene.
Yeah,
and a child at home.
And your mother's writing a lot about sex. I think I've been reading Molly. I mean, they're all prodigies. I mean, I think Erica published her first book when she was 31, but her daughter published her first book when she was 21.
And
novel.
And that daughter is just an heir to literary royalty because her father
her grandfather,
is the son of
right
Howard Fast,
right,
who
wrote Spartacus
and many other novels, and then was blacklisted.
Yeah,
and he was a communist,
and he was like a Stalin, as he
got an award from Joseph Stalin
to the end. But I picked up her memoir, which she wrote at the ripe old age of 26. It's called "The Sex Doctors in the Basement," which referred to the tenants. Her mother, they had this brownstone in the East 90s, which then was not as glamorous as it is now. And
that's putting it mildly.
And they had all these sexual therapists, psychiatrists who were their tenants. But she writes, I mean, this was just one of the funniest, wittiest, cleverest memoirs. Seriously, I've read. And I mean, what a handful Molly would have been. She's obviously so smart and completely embarrassed by all of her mother's sexual writings of the time, as you can imagine. So anyway, I'm just thrilled they're coming into the studio. This is super exciting. But before we get to them, briefly, we have a few things, right, to discuss, Christina?
Yes. You wanted to do some Gwyneth Paltrow bashing?
Oh, no.
And I don't approve of that. No. I like her.
I know. I like Gwyneth Paltrow, too, but I haven't brought up an article for a while from the Daily Mail, and you know how much I love it. And so I'm going to bring up an article from the Daily Mail, which was a very hilarious coverage by Liz Jones of the Daily Mail. She went inside Gwyneth Paltrow's £1,000-a-ticket Goop Wellness Festival, the first one held in London. Now, the £1,000
That was
ticket,
the cut rate ticket.
that was the cut rate because you want to have the weekend pass, which was $4,500 pounds
for the Summit Warriors.
Yeah, so that's pounds. That's British pounds. So that works out to something like
$5,668, if my calculations are right.
Did you?
I have a little calculator in my brain for the
that
British
sounds
pound.
about right, Christina. Anyway, so for this, you got multiple seminars. Liz Jones tried on, it's called an LED mask. You look like a serial killer. Imagine, what was the Friday, the hockey mask?
Oh, yes.
But then lit up in red. That's what you look like.
That is terrifying.
But
I
you
see
got
a
to do
photo.
that. You got to work out, with a celebrity trainer, Tracy Anderson. That's Gwyneth.
They had breathing therapists.
They had breathing therapists. They had a plant-based breakfast of vegan donuts and cauliflower popcorn.
Ugh, I don't want either of those
And
ever.
And anyway, it's sold out. 250-day tickets gone. 35 weekend passes, cleaned up, and what it really made me think, this looks pretty easy to do, Christina. We should just have a femsplainer version, like a Femsplain Fest.
Festival.
And we could have seminars, and we could, what would we, well, we wouldn't offer cauliflower.
No cauliflower.
You would have caramel corn, knowing
There'd
you.
be a lot of caramel corn, and instead of detox, we'd be
No detox.
No detox.
No detoxifications. Not on your face. Not in your glass. There'd
No,
be
it would be
juices.
fun.
No cleansing juices.
no cleanses. No. No.
Nothing. We're not getting into those topics of things
No
you
bee
put inside
sting.
you.
She has bee sting therapy. Apparently, it's good for your complexion to get a bee sting.
Not if you're allergic. Horribly
that's-
allergic
I
to bee
was-
stings.
Stung by a bee. Maybe that explains my glowy complexion.
Yeah, I mean, we could just I think we should seriously consider it. We'd have to come up with. I mean, we could have like a whole room just filled with IVs for people who were hungover.
IV.
The IV cleanse for when you've drunk too much.
Martini workshops.
Cocktail workshops. We could do that.
And instead of curated rose water or I don't know what else she has there, various crystals and things, we could have
Rosé
exactly
all day.
Yeah, rosé
Okay.
all day.
Okay, so we need to work on this. Could you ask Ella to research that for us as part of her first research projects for you?
Yes. 4,500 British pounds for the ticket. We
55. Well, we could just, let's just charge 5,000.
okay.
5,000. Okay. That seems fair. Okay, and then we'll leave the podcast and go live in Mexico or something. Okay.
Well, you're not going to get a lot of millennial customers at your Femsplain Fest, unfortunately.
Why?
At least according to a recent Washington Post article, which says that half of American drinkers say they'd like to drink less alcohol, but that jumps up to 2/3 of millennial drinkers. It's about apparently being a bit more present with your friends, connection. People really want connection, according to this article.
Well, if 2/3 of them want to drink less, doesn't that mean they're drinking a lot?
So maybe that's a good point.
Maybe they are a Femsplain friendly group.
Well, we
My
can
sense.
teach them
Every
how
time-
to connect with booze. Isn't that what we used to call the cocktail hour?
Yeah. And every time I have had parties for
Yes, right.
For
you
millennials?
you have your annual millennials
party, and they come and they drink a lot
yeah. Even
into
like
the
us, they
small
make us
hours of
look
the night.
like
Yeah, I was
amateurs.
impressed. So I think that may not be indicative of being Femsplain Fest averse.
Although I remember I had threatened to bring on this book in January called Sober Curious about a woman who had written about becoming sober. It was very worthy. It was January, and
I think I
was trying-
vetoed it.
I think you vetoed
I'm
it.
sober, curious. I'm indifferent.
But it's become a fashionable thing. I noticed that she like does these like cool New York things. So is this Ella? Is this what this is part of? These millennials like getting into their sober mocktail parties, or?
I have yet to be invited to a mocktail party, but I do know people who don't drink a lot, but they tend to be health nuts.
Yeah.
Like they're the same who eat grilled chicken and broccoli every day and go to the gym for 3 hours. But apparently there are sober nightclubs and sober early morning dance parties.
What would you do at a sober nightclub? What would be the point?
I guess you would just dance with yourself, dancing with myself. No, I don't know. I this is, I think,
Have a seminar. I think
we're now dating ourselves. Now we're going to feel age. We are going to become ab-fab. And,
God, we're
this
there.
whole millennial
We're there.
generation is Safi, the daughter, the uptight daughter. Oh, millennials, don't become our Safi. But yeah, that's
where we're going with this. But can I just bring up a topic that is on my mind, and it's more serious than anything we've considered so far
is this
today.
on a sober note?
On a sober note, which is what happened to my friend Andy No in Portland.
Yes, your hometown. Oh, not your hometown.
Well, I go there a lot, and I know Andy very well. And he's a young journalist. His family came here in the 70s from Vietnam, and he
writes for Quillette, right?
He writes for Quillette. He's a photojournalist. When I spoke at Lewis and Clark Law School, I invited him along just because I needed moral support, and he was a friend. But he was the one that took the pictures and videos and then posted it on, because the students, the protesters came and behaved outrageously, wouldn't let me speak. And Andy just quietly went around the room and documented it.
He's also, I read that he's small, like he's like not some.
He's small.
And
he's
gay.
about 5'6".
He's gay.
He's gay, and he is very soft-spoken, very gentle, and so he was brutally beaten by a mob, just this enraged mob of Antifa, so-called anti-fascists, but they are fascists, and they wear masks and disguise themselves. And then, it's not the first time they've attacked people, but in this case, it was all caught on video. It's shocking.
I saw the clip, and he was just standing there, and suddenly these black masked people descended on him.
Goons
just started to. They
punch him and kick him, and then they poured milkshake and more, and took his camera, and he's just staggering away and probably completely traumatized. Yeah. And he has, I don't know how serious it is, but he has some kind of a head injury. He had a contusion. He had a hemorrhage.
And the police didn't come quickly.
The police didn't. Well, they don't. They stand down because they have this mayor, Ted Wheeler. And every time it's depicted in the press as if, it's just like some right-wing nuts came and then some left-wingers, and it was just, they had a fight. But that's not what's going on. There are some crazy right-wingers there, but there are a lot of Antifa members and just hooligans that come out and beat up. Sometimes they just beat up people who are in cars. And this is on tape, but then it's sort of covered up in the press. They write about it in the Oregonian and the various newspapers, and then the national press just never picks it up. Now, in Andy's case, it has been on CNN. It's all over the media. But I was disappointed with some of the coverage, and some liberal left-wing journalists who want to depict him as he brought it on himself. He's a crazy right-winger. He's not a right-winger. He's
not
Quillette.
Like Milo. Not that this would justify anything.
It wouldn't justify. I don't want to see anybody beaten up.
Right.
But let alone this small, sweet, gentle guy who was doing nothing wrong except
literally standing there.
And he's brave. He goes to these events and films when very few other journalists would go and do that because it's scary.
Well, Antifa to the left is what I guess neo-Nazis are to the right. Like it's nobody wants people to hear people different from them, do different views, and they're violent. And
but I would like to see more repudiation from liberal senators and congressmen, and because this happened in an American
city. That
city.
Wasn't spoken out against enough?
Not enough, because it was a terrible thing to happen. It's something you would expect to see in some kind of country that's under dictatorship and with goons going out.
Or remember the Turkish goons
exactly
during the early days of the Trump administration attacked protesters outside I think it was the Turkish embassy. Yeah, no, it was
That was
horrible.
awful.
And that was just like to see that on American soil. And this is very similar.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's pray, Andy.
Yes, Andy,
okay.
and we'll have him come on sometime.
Yeah,
and talk
and talk about this experience. Let's now bring on the mom-daughter duo, Erica and Molly. So excited to have them here. Welcome to the Femsplainers, Erica and Molly. This is so thrilling to have you in studio. We have little Bet, who is Molly's daughter.
She's waving.
She's waving. She's been told to be silent, and she's sitting in the back in a
such a good
swiveling
girl.
chair.
She's a very good poet and storyteller.
She's a very good and known for her quietness, I think, really.
Right. Hardly.
Shaking her
We
head
have
in
3
reverence.
generations.
We have 3 generations, so this is thrilling. I just want to say I've only recently befriended Molly, and it's just like a soul sister. I mean, it's just... and I've been reading her memoirs, and they are amazing, and I can't believe she wrote them when she was so young, which we talked about, by the way, before you both came on. And then, and you have been a heroine. Like, I read all your books when they came out, so I was reading your books as a teenager in the mid-'70s, so
Wow.
quite pretty early on. And I remember experiencing them as just this revelation. I was reading all of the sort of feminists of the time, like whom we would now consider mainstream, like Gloria Steinem and Nora Ephron, and then you. And it was so sort of heady and exciting. And then years pass, fast forward, I start writing stuff about the fallout of the sexual revolution.
Right.
And I think we were on a panel together. I think maybe
I think
Tina Brown was involved. And I think I bothered you because I
it was your church lady
It was like,
phase.
no, it was
No,
my church, but I was
You
saying
were
like,
concerned about backlash.
I was concerned about,
Hookups.
I was concerned that there had now that this wonderful sort of
Church lady
sexual liberation was leading to fallout. Which was annoying to say to you, and you were rightly annoyed with me. But then now we're looking at a generation which isn't having sex at all, and which has created these Germanic rules about sex,
Yeah.
so they don't have sex. So this,
They don't have sex because of the Me Too.
But one of the nice
Yeah.
things about my mom, I will say though, just to get a compliment in there, is she's like, she doesn't remember if she was. She's very unmad and very sort of.
Oh, maybe she's like me. Like
I don't know.
someone
I
maybe
don't know.
attacked
You
me and I don't
wouldn't
remember.
but I could.
I am a middle daughter.
Yeah.
I'm a second daughter of a second daughter of a second daughter, and I don't hold grudges.
Yeah.
Even for bad reviewers.
Except
In
there
my-
was one friend who slept with your ex-boyfriend.
Oh, come on!
Never got over.
You have to hold a grudge to that person.
You know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to say who it is. My friend, who was the interviewer, who slept with the ex-boyfriend, who I think is actually gay.
Whoa! This
Whatever.
down a
He was
rabbit hole.
he's a very good-looking, sort of fabulous guy,
Who?
but
Angela?
yeah, I'm trying to be discreet.
Well,
But anyway, she.
Okay, but you should
Angelo, if
always
you're
hold
out
a
there,
grudge
I'm
against a friend
available.
who sleeps with an ex. But seriously,
He's so
the change
handsome.
of
I know,
the
I know.
change of sexual politics
is weird.
in that arc. So
It's very strange.
So tell us what you think. Have your politics changed? What
My
what do you think
politics
right now?
have not changed. I think women need a female desire has got to be possible. It shouldn't be indiscriminate.
Mm-hmm.
With me, it was never indiscriminate, despite the fantasy of the zipless fuck. And
Which was your invention, that
right.
phrase, yes.
but I like intimacy with people, with women friends, with men friends, and I don't want to sleep with somebody that I don't like.
You are
Right.
you're
And-
you're a bit that may be the stage of life. Was that a okay way
What?
to say that? That may be big.
No, you were. I think your original concept was there was this unleashing exuberance.
Right.
And women could be as wild as men,
Right.
and full of desire,
And
and wanting of
women's
adventure.
desire throughout history has gotten a bad rap.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I really do. I mean, we desire pleasure just like all human beings
Right.
do. Dopaminergic release, right? Pleasure.
Right.
We desire pleasure. But we don't want to be indiscriminate. That doesn't mean we want to sleep with any bloke. Really.
Right.
We want intimacy and connection and humor and laughter and intellectual connection.
Right.
But our desire has never been given its due. That is my view. And that view has never changed.
But what do you think then is happening now? Because what I also loved about your books is this recognition that men and women love each other and should or can love each other and should be exuberant with each other.
Absolutely.
And now it's like the Cold War or something. I mean, what do you sort of see going
Me
around?
Too movement, I find the courage of it wonderful. But I think a lot of women, what they're getting out of it is all men are rapists. And that is not true. All men are not rapists. There are men in this world who want to seduce you with music and words and read poetry to you. But they're nice men.
Right, but
You
that's
married a nice man.
But that's not
I
what
married a nice
I married a nice man.
But I don't know that Me Too is about nice men. I think
No,
it's
Me
about
Too-
power.
Me Too is
men
about
using
men
power.
using power.
Diabolical manipulators
Right.
and
I
criminals.
mean, you think of Harvey Weinstein.
Right. And Harvey Weinstein, I mean, what's interesting about Harvey Weinstein, my brother worked for him, was that that was going on for such a long time and everyone knew.
And everyone knew.
And it was not, and he stayed at the Peninsula because that was where he was involved with prostitutes, he was involved with this, he was involved with that.
He was involved. He's such a bully with everyone.
Right.
He would hit men. He was known
Yeah.
at a board meeting to have thrown a whiskey bottle at his brother's head.
Yeah.
I mean, well, maybe that was.
I'm sure.
That was Jared Kushner's father.
Does he talk to
confused.
Bob, his brother?
I think not anymore.
Not-
No, because
yeah.
also there was some suggestion at the time that his brother leaked all of this finally
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
control of the guy. It's
Yeah.
so
His
sordid.
brother is, from what I can tell, a pretty good guy.
Well, it's
Wow, I
certainly
don't
not.
know.
Who
I
knows?
can't-
But not
know him
guilty of this.
Only superficially, so
yeah.
I don't know.
But your point, I guess, is what you're saying is we all agree that Me Too, is we all exactly agree with what you just said. I think what is
Women were
disturbing
courageous.
is that millennials are really not procreating. We've joked in the past they're like pandas. I mean, it's like they're scared of each other. They're not touching. We have to get them in
That's
cages
partial
together.
social media too.
Right.
They're not meeting.
Or they're going on these weird apps. But tell us, so what? And Molly, you've sort of seen this too. Like, what is?
I don't mind it. I mean, I think every generation thinks the generation after them is completely screwed up. Like,
Yeah,
if you think about
I
it,
agree with
that
you.
there's like, they're
agree.
either having too much sex or too little sex or this or that. So I don't mind it. I mean, I think that our birth rate is going down, which is probably not such a bad thing. And
which is a good thing for the environment.
and I also just think that, I don't know, these kind of things, we get so stuck on this, that the next generation has it wrong. I mean, Me Too was about women trying to take back the narrative of power in the office.
Absolutely.
And so I think we'll see.
And they were very brave to do it.
But I think there may be like a course correction with millennial men, though it's funny because I feel like the men who really are super careful are the men who never would have done in the first place.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like
I would just add one thing about because I've thought about that. To me, I very much identified with sort of pro-sex feminism, and
Right.
I love your mom's work, your work, and Camille Pawley and several other feminists. And then there was Andrea Dworkin and Catherine McKinnon. And that was a very paranoid view of masculinity, of sexuality. It made it seem like a woman's body was just a crime scene.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was defeated, and it wasn't taken that seriously, and much more affirmative styles of feminism were prominent. But I feel the Dworkinism, McKinnonism has come back.
And that scares me a lot.
And
that
is
really
scary.
scares me because that's the natural conclusion of Penceism. Is that, and Trumpism.
It's very conservative
Right.
and reactionary.
Right.
And it's not about being equal to man and
No,
being liberated.
it's
It's
not.
about being fearful
Right.
and seeking protection.
Yeah.
So I see it as a movement that's taking us back.
That's
that
really
worries me with a lot of, on the college campus.
Yeah.
So I hear
It worries me too. And
talking that way. They were taught
dressing
that.
up like handmaids.
Exactly, they are. And they're in full rebellion against their sexuality because they think, well, if I'm sexual, that means I'm oppressed. So they dress.
The whole message of enjoyment is lost. That I don't know what parents are saying to their kids.
Right.
That, sex is a wonderful thing, expression between, people who love each other. It's just fun. Is like, I don't think anyone's saying that. I think it's like, don't get in a situation with a boy and don't drink too much and check your drinks. My two younger daughters have whole roofie rules about like if you leave a drink at a party,
Right.
that drink is dead. You never go back to that drink.
I think the roofie thing is a bit of a myth.
How old are your daughters?
27 and 17.
But
That's like we never.
My
did that.
father said to me before I went to Florence to study Italian, the summer I was 19, he said, never drink grappa with an Italian man. That's my dad. And I said, what is grappa? He said, it's a very strong drink. Never drink grappa.
Also known as gropa.
But I don't think it necessarily. I don't know. I don't think it necessarily. I don't know that this is going to go down the way we think it is.
Right.
With the anti-sex feminism. I think it's scary. I think it's coming. We've seen the writing on the wall. You see Mike Pence has one message, and, they want to get rid of abortion, but they also really want to get rid of birth control. Birth control is where this is all going.
And they want to get rid of pleasure.
Well,
And that's from the left, too.
Right.
But what worries me is when you have it on the left and the right.
Right, that's the question.
And I worry about a healthy center of liberals and moderate conservatives. And I don't think they've yet found their voice.
We definitely
They're being shouted
need that.
down.
I think feminists, though, especially on the left, have to just keep a very pro-sex agenda and not go into that Andrea Dworkin stuff, which is dangerous. But, luckily there aren't that many feminists. So
There aren't.
I mean, there's we
know
can just
what,
we
Molly?
can just tell them at the next meeting.
You're
I mean,
absolutely right.
And I'm being ironic, of course. It's not lucky, but I mean, the
That's absolutely
anti-feminist
true.
movement, which is really scary. Women who won't call themselves feminists because they think it means something that if you
But
ask,
it doesn't mean.
right, if you ask Tommy Lauren if she considers herself a feminist, I would I would be horrified to know what she would say. A lot of so I feel like.
But what's important to know is that throughout history, female pleasure has not been honored. And if you look at 19th century novels, Madame Bovary poisons herself, Anna Karenina falls on a train track, and you go back in history, well, perhaps in the ancient world, Sappho and Roman women were freer. But desire is a part of life. And you can't throw away pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are creatures who need pleasure.
All right, let me throw then, exactly on that note, let me throw out another idea or another topic. Porn. I'm looking at Bet in the room. Bet, you need to go outside for a
There's
second.
a child in the room.
Yeah, my little 11-year-old. Are you okay?
I've heard some stuff.
Porn.
She's heard some stuff.
Yeah,
she closes
Bet's
her
like
ears.
Bet's been putting her fingers in her. Okay,
I'm going to need to scrub my
Porn.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's we don't need to get graphic.
Can I ask a discreet question about porn?
Okay. Well, I was going to try discretize it, and then
Okay.
you can add.
I'm just going to add that Fleischman is in trouble. Taffy Brodesser. Have you seen that novel?
I haven't seen
She's
it yet, but
seen
she's
what?
fabulous.
She's a fabulous writer. And
Who?
Taffy Brodesser Ackner, and she has a bestseller that everyone's talking about. Fleischman is in trouble. And this is about 30 and 40, or about 40-year-olds. This man is suddenly divorced. And
We're opening Frescas, by the way. That isn't beer.
Who is
that's
this
a
author?
Fresca.
What's
Taffy Brodesser Ackner.
You know her. She writes a lot. She
Writes a lot of profiles for
Taffy
New Yorker and
Brodesser?
Vanity Fair.
Yeah. She's great.
But
And she makes a lot of money, which got people very upset.
well, she's a great writer. But
Right,
this
and they got
book,
very mad
this
at her
book
for making
is about 40-year-olds dating, and this guy is suddenly single, and these women that he's dating are sending him. How do I put this discreetly with a child in the room? Close-ups of intimate parts of their body. He's just bombarded. I mean, of course, she's exaggerating, but even though we have this sort of sex-phobic style of feminism in the universities, on the other hand, people are going crazy online.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is about one of the stories I came across. I'm sorry, I'm not going to tell you, or I'm not going to remember where I found it, but it's like legit that doctors' offices are starting to treat women who have shown up with injuries normally associated with sexual assault from men who are overly enthusiastic and have watched a lot of porn.
Wait,
because they haven't had sex in years?
I don't know. It's just like it's like that nice dentist you went out on a date with, and then he behaves and asks you to behave in a way that is not that how you would normally do it. So it's sort of like this, maybe the misperception of what is a woman's desire from watching porn, because a lot of people seem to now be getting.
I don't like porn.
Okay,
Mom.
tell us
I don't
why.
like it.
No, I want to hear that.
It looks like
If I watch
Nice.
porn,
I'm always
it's
happy.
close-ups
I'm
of
happy that my
throbbing.
mom never feels that she can't just bring it to the personal. That
okay,
makes-
look,
Good. No, I want to hear it.
You take away that
after
fourth wall.
5 minutes of porn, I want to have sex, and after 10 minutes, I
Jesus.
never want to have sex again as long as I live.
That's perfect. That's exactly right.
Don't.
Then it becomes Wild Kingdom or something.
Don't tell that to the girls that you're girls.
Okay, that is okay. Well, okay, let's move this
to
But I say one other
yeah, of
thing.
course.
yes.
I hate branding. I hate the fact that the older generation has to brand people born in a certain decade. Okay? They feel the responsibility to call them millennials.
Yeah, but that's...
And then to generalize about them. I don't think you can generalize about people.
Well, they're
Not because people who are born in one decade are not all alike. That is marketing BS, in my opinion. Yeah. And I truly despise it. I mean, I hate it when people my age say, well, the millennials.
Well, you just don't. You are preternaturally young. No, I mean, I was just like the youngest. Older generations are those who do not succumb to that. Although I do think it's funny that my generation, or our generation, seems like is saying, "You young people, you don't have enough sex. What's wrong with you? You need to drink a little more." You know, like it's the opposite. Where did that come from?
Hilarious.
Where did that come from?
I have a question that I want to ask Erica, because before I read your novels, I read your poetry. I was in Paris with NYU in
Fruits
Paris.
and vegetables.
My
Half-lives.
friend brought some wonderful poetry books, and it was there, and I discovered it and was a fan early on.
Thank you.
But I was thinking today.
I've just published a new book of poetry. The world began with yes.
Oh, I have.
Oh.
I mean,
And I love it.
enchanting
And now the
novelist,
world begins with
but
no.
she's a brilliant poet.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about what it would be like today to be a poet, short story writer, because we're living in this cancel culture. Where
What culture?
Cancel, where you can be canceled. You can be,
Yes.
a mob will come after you because you dared to enter the psyche of someone of a different, sexual preference or race or ethnicity. And I've read now that people that write fiction for the youth market, they have to have sensitivity readers who will go through. I mean, it's like having the Catholic Church go
Right.
through and crossing
It's
out
true.
what you can't say.
Like what happened to Linda Fairstein
Yes.
recently.
What was that? Linda
She handled it spectacularly badly.
She handled it badly.
So Linda Fairstein. Can I bring
She
everyone?
was a prosecutor.
She was a prosecutor on the Central Park Five.
Oh, yes, of course.
And
And then she became a very successful writer.
A mystery writer.
right.
Yes.
But she
really,
really, she should have. I mean, that was like, I actually thought
Police
that.
procedure,
I actually
yeah.
felt like that was like Joe Biden. If she had just apologized and said she had made a mistake and that, she didn't have the DNA evidence. I mean, it was like Joe Biden with the busing. If he had just said, look, we thought it was the right decision at the time, but we now know that it was not a good decision.
You're absolutely right, Molly.
But
he could have said, look, it was another generation.
Right. And
We
I didn't like
get
that
it.
attack. I thought she was kind of mean to him, and that he should.
We didn't get it.
But
It should be possible.
He should have
to
had a
say we
better
didn't
response.
get
he
it.
should have. His response
Yeah.
was. I mean, if you're gonna, and that was Linda Fairstein too. They went to Linda Fairstein and she said, I did the right thing. And
But forgetting her for a minute, because that's maybe people don't know that case. But there are writers now. You can get in trouble if you write a novel, and you dare to have characters that aren't your specific identity. You can
Right.
only write about yourself, or you are appropriating, or you
What
are.
does that do to fiction? Like,
I don't know.
It's not a good
I mean, the
time
good
for
news is
fiction.
that fiction has died. I mean, that's the bad news actually. But
No, I think it's very bad for for art right now.
It is very bad for art, because
is
things are verboten, and you cannot make art if certain things are forbidden to talk about.
Well, I think you can. I don't agree. I mean, what's bad for art is that people aren't reading novels anymore.
Right.
That is bad.
But because they're not interesting. If people have to
also,
be in this
TV
narrow-
is really great right
TV
now.
is really great, and I think it's
also-
TV too because it's killing movies too. I mean, I also think some
comedy.
right,
What's happened to
comedy,
cartoonists?
but I also think some of it is that
you're
that
very
the
right.
modern attention span has changed.
That's true.
And so it's so short
all
that we're
tweeting.
not.
You're on Twitter a lot. I'm on
Yeah.
Twitter a lot.
Molly is a brilliant tweeter.
Wow.
Are you
I
on
don't know
Twitter,
about
Eric?
that.
Yes,
It
I
has
am, but
addled
I'm
my
not as
brain.
good-
I'm worried about.
Erica,
I think it's,
yeah.
I'm really kind of worried about it.
I
Molly's
actually
got
think
into
it's
an art.
made me a better writer.
Very, very
Really?
I mean, I'm not necessarily as long a writer as I used to be able to, but I'm much more careful.
It's like writing a haiku.
Words
So you-
matter so
Yes.
much with a
They
tweet,
do.
and you can change the entire meaning of a sentence with a word. And I've made mistakes where I put accuser as opposed to victim or
I
victim.
know.
You know what I mean? No, but it's so interesting to me the way that all of these words really matter, and so I think it's
almost
made
like
me a lot
writing
better.
poetry.
Right.
Every word has a valence,
Right.
Yes.
and you really you learn how to use each word.
The one thing I would say that I think is the failing of the genre is that I don't know why there's no weight placed on melodiousness. Like, I love
Right.
prose that are very melodious, where things read, like, one of my favorite things to do with my kids was to read Dr. Seuss, because I just love
Right.
a very melodious
Oh
prose.
my God! I want to make my tweets melodious.
Right? Don't you? And
I've never thought of that.
but
course.
I feel like there's no
That
value
is
placed
sad.
on that.
I'm
Last night,
Right, you should.
I went to a play with my sister at the
Warner in D.C. or
in New York.
Or in New York.
in New York at the what is it? The Players Club, and it was a play about the absurdity of people trying to modernize Shakespeare's English. And it was written by a playwright called Dykstra, and it was all in blank verse, rhymed blank verse.
Yeah.
And all the characters were debating whether we should modernize Shakespeare, and they were end-stopped couplets. It was so clever and so skillful, and ultimately very boring.
That sounds too high-minded.
I was thinking to
for me.
myself,
I
I guess I want to.
Well, let's. I just want to go back a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask, although of course I'm asking.
Right.
Like, hey Molly, how was it growing up in a house
Ask
with a mother who's the sex goddess? Okay, we're not going to do that. Not least because
ask me.
Bet is here.
No, but
I want to talk about you
Molly
being as a writer.
had a good growing
can do it.
up.
Bet's saying do it.
Bet said, go for it.
Bet, I have promised Bet that I'm going to bring her on at the end of this.
Okay,
give
good.
her,
So
give us her views.
She's very articulate and funny.
No surprise there. Yeah. So, but as you as writers, I mean, okay. So Molly, you've published. This is what I gather: 4 books, 3 novels, 3. Okay, because
One of the books is the same book with a different title.
Oh,
that's how you know
that's
really bombed. That book we published with
the
a
Sex
different
Doctors
title.
in the Basement. Why would that's a great
It's
title?
a great book.
It sold so badly in hardcover that as a Hail Mary they changed the title.
Okay, but
for
you are
paperback.
like
That's something
a
they
prodigy.
used to do.
First of all,
When a
you
book
drive your
really-
mother crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah,
You're the
crazy.
only child. I'm reading this book, and I know there's a little bit of young woman snark in it.
Oh.
But you come off as like, I'm just trying to hold it all together. I'm
Yeah.
a single mother.
Yeah.
I'm this like celebrated
Oh, yeah.
woman, and
Oh, yeah.
I've got to like and hey, we're going to tea with Joan Collins.
Yeah, and I'm like writing about her. No, she.
And but like also to be fair to you, you feel, you sort of go at
She
14
feels
into
oppressed.
drugs and
Yeah.
thrown into therapy. And
Yeah.
you have to get a
Well,
hobby, so
therapy
you
is
take
good.
up horseback
Right,
riding
and then the horse.
you get
Right,
a
and
pony
the
who's
horse
dead.
blockage.
Yeah, that horse died.
Whatever.
They lost
All I can tell you,
us about
the
that.
horse.
Molly was so funny.
I really wanted that horse, and that horse.
When you
Yeah.
were very little,
I remember
You
getting that
put-
horse,
you put
and then that was
a
the end of
piece
it.
of Scotch tape around your finger
Right.
and said, "Look, Mommy, sliver of dawn."
Aww.
What?
And I said, "Molly, you're going to be a poet." And I remember telling my therapist,
Dr. Mildred Newman.
Everybody
Figures
had
prominently.
therapists, right?
No, but
Was
figures.
that Jackie Kennedy's?
Yes, it was everybody.
Anyway,
wow, nice.
Mildred
Yeah.
said,
I'm okay. You're okay.
"My hunch is she's going to be a writer." And I said, "How do you know?"
Mildred, can we talk about Mildred Newman for a minute?
She was extremely
She was in a
funny.
Woody Allen movie or something.
Yeah.
It ruined her life.
Yeah. Well,
She was hated because.
yeah.
Woody
She was.
was-
She.
Poor Woody.
All right.
Or
Whatever.
Woody. Now, don't we feel bad for him?
I feel bad
He's
for him.
being canceled and erased.
I don't
mean,
feel at all
He's
bad.
made
for
a
him, sorry.
lot of movies.
Yeah,
I
yeah, no, he
mean,
freaks me out.
He
He
got
made a movie
way.
every year.
Yeah, he got way more than. Can you imagine
the
a
talent,
woman?
The talent.
No, his talent. He's
His
a guy.
talent-
He still writes his
Yeah.
movies. I'm sorry to digress. On a typewriter, and when you watch his movies, it's like the internet hasn't been invented.
Right.
I mean, he's like
Yeah.
so in a bubble. That guy.
I mean, some of those
You know
movies
what?
were great,
He's
but
not a bad person.
but
He is not a bad
Not
person.
a
know
bad
him?
person.
yeah, we both.
Oh, okay.
Also a
Okay, so
distant
tell us.
cousin of my husband's.
But
But, once a year, Woody takes us out to dinner. And Woody used
Where
to
do
be...
you go? Where do you go?
Santa.
Oh, who
Saturday
knows?
Med-
I can't remember.
Saturday Meds where they don't take reservations and they have an account
but-
so they can overcharge.
Okay.
They have
but
the best
Woody
truffles in the
is a
world.
distant cousin of Ken, my husband. And Ken's uncle
Was Abe Burrows,
was Abe Burrows.
who named names. My grandfather was Howard Fast, who did not name.
Did not name it.
But who
Anyway,
was a communist.
Well, man,
They all were.
My parents.
They all were communists.
and didn't
Every-
disavow Stalin until like 1982. But who's
a
counting?
little late, a little
Right.
late.
He's
and
like-
got the Stalin Prize.
And one time Howard got on the Fifth Avenue bus and ran into Lillian Hellman.
Ah.
And Lillian said, "I forgive you, Howard," on the Fifth Avenue bus. Can you believe it?
Yeah,
they were
wow.
so Michigan, all these
York
people.
story.
They really were.
Okay, but somehow, okay, now
Oh, we digress. We digressed.
Beyond digress.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you.
Wait,
about
where were
writing,
we?
Writing.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you. So you're this. So you have serious issues.
Yes.
But you come out of it in your early 20s.
Yeah, I got sober when I was 19. So I was like a very big drug addict. My grandmother was a pretty...
Bet's eyes are.
What drugs? What drugs?
Drug addict?
Drugs? What drugs?
What was your
That must have
drug?
been cocaine.
drug?
It's your age group.
Cocaine.
Oh, God.
But my grandmother was...
I tried it once and nothing happened.
Which grandmother? You mean my mother?
Ida
She
a
was a
spectacular alcoholic.
yeah.
And I mean,
I would
like,
say that alcoholism and addiction run in our family.
So anyway, I was
Right.
very into cocaine, and then when I was about 19, I thought I'm gonna die. Like I'm just gonna die. So I was a freshman at one of the many colleges, Barnard. I had dropped out of Wesleyan.
No, you were at Wesleyan.
At Wesleyan. I dropped out of Wesleyan,
You were at
and I was
Wesleyan.
at Barnard now. It was
Get it? You're dropping out of pretty fancy schools, if I just may
It
say.
was the 90s. It was much easier to get into
And then
those
you went
schools.
to the Gallatin division at NYU.
But I would just she was about to give a speech, and I was in the car with her, and I said, I'm a cocaine addict and an alcoholic, and I have to go to rehab right now. And she was like, I'm about to go and give a speech to like 300 people.
Yeah,
And I was like, I need to go now. So, and
Okay,
she
we
was like,
went-
can I just do the speech and then we'll take you to rehab? Do you remember?
Molly,
I
you
remember
attention
very.
seeker.
And then we went home, and we called Hazelden,
Yeah, we got it.
and they didn't have a bed.
Well, I
This
had
is a rehab center.
Yeah, rehab.
and
but
then
you saved your own life. That's good.
I
Your mother
called.
Yeah.
helped.
I called Judy Collins, who's a dear friend, and I said, Judy,
You have to get us into this.
you have to. And her son at that point was the director of publicity for Hazelden.
of admissions, and
Right.
Not a mission.
recruitment.
And
we got it.
I
We got
called Center City and I said, Judy,
It was a very busy time at rehab.
you have to get a bed for
November
us.
1997.
She's got to have.
November. This was November 1997.
1997.
We went to the
November
airport.
1st.
We got on a
Yeah.
plane to
Yes.
Center City, Minnesota.
Nice.
And
nice destination
it was-
there,
is
too.
Is that where
You're gonna
is
be
that where
dry.
Hazelton is?
In
You're
November.
I thought it was in
guaranteed to work.
Malibu.
And when
No,
we got
that's like the good one. This
my
is
when
like
we
the
got
real
to
one.
Center
This is like
City,
Jane Eyre one.
Yeah,
right?
There
this
was-
is like the one where they
Cold
like,
and dark
They have
and-
the swimming pool, but they won't let you use it. It's all just like group.
Was it
therapy.
reform school?
It was like you know what? I had never been anywhere where people were like, "You're full of shit," and
right?
for
Everybody
me,
always said you're so
it was
brilliant.
amazing. Like I would be like, "But you don't understand. I had this," and they were like, "No, we understand. Like we
shut up.
completely have your number."
That's
And
good.
It was amazing, and
But
I-
liberal parents in the 70s, and they couldn't tell you.
But you know
Right.
what was
They
great?
couldn't, and they were very tough, and it was a really cool experience. And I had Thanksgiving there, and it was like, and they came and visited. All my family came. They were my father is a social work professor, so he was very excited because he
Yes.
got to learn lots of stuff.
Right.
And my mom came, and she got to. There
We
was
went
a
in
guy
the
who
family
sawed off his
program.
arm, and that got her very. He was very
my
poetic.
God.
That guy, remember that
Yeah,
guy?
you found him, I'm sure, like,
I was like, and there's a guy with no arm.
Why did he saw it off?
It was
cocaine
amazing.
or heroin.
I don't.
Okay, but
I don't even know.
So you're going through this, which
Yeah.
is terrible and awful. And I, as a mother, like what was interesting reading your memoir is I'm now at the age where I'm seeing it from both sides.
Right.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And you were just trying to hold things together, and yeah, you're going to a speech. Like, come on, Molly, this is like breadwinning
Well, mom
here.
is like super. She's not like that. Like, if it were me with one of my kids, I'd be like, okay, you have to shut the fuck up. We'll deal with this in 2 hours. But my mom is like, oh, darling, how did I fail you?
Oh.
Which is really sweet. And she's like a very supportive mother. And her mother was really, really mean.
My mother was a horror.
I'm a little more like her mother. Like,
Was your
Yeah,
mother
it's
really
like-
mean?
really?
No,
mean.
my mother was.
I mean,
Which
My mother.
Ida.
Ida threw up
raging alcoholic.
in
I mean,
all
she
the
was a
5-star
raging
restaurants all over the world.
Yeah.
Where was she from, or her parents from? Where did
Her parents were
Kiev
Russian
originally, so it's
Jews.
Russian.
We're all Ashkenazic Jews,
But they
very
came to
anxious.
England
Anxious.
And my grandmother and grandfather came from Odessa.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't. They came from Grodno.
But it was like
But
there
they
was
grew up in
It
Odessa,
was
and then
very anxious Jews who came over in the 1800s. Like they were like, we see the writing on the wall. This is not going to end.
They were the
well for
most
us."
prescient.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they were the most anxious, and I think honestly, like
and we are all anxious.
really anxious. And all my grandparents were born in this country except my grandmother was born in England. And I always think about that because I think like they really self-selected the most anxious people.
No, they say like the Jews who were optimists ended up in Auschwitz.
Right.
The pessimists Hollywood.
You know what? You're so absolutely right. My husband is an optimistic Jew. My husband and I have a great difficulty. He says, the legal system will bring Trump down. And I say, fascism fast, law slow.
I think the
That
voters
should be
would
a
bring him
bumper
down.
sticker for the 2020.
And I say, fascism moves fast, law moves slow.
Yeah.
You've got to go to the court. You've got to argue.
Let's get back on.
Okay, I just feel like I now just want to just
Yes.
drop names and hear
Please.
your stories.
Yeah, let's drop names.
about-
Yeah,
because
let's
you
go
grew
for
up-
it.
Yeah.
But okay, so to your
Don't
writing,
on.
so you're no well.
Lillian
figured
Hellman. I always thought
She
she
called you fat, but I wanted to get the Henry Miller.
Joan
I wanted to
Collins
get the
called
Henry
you
Miller.
fat?
Where are you?
Okay, so I met Henry Miller because this
Yeah.
came on and we had to actually shut you guys down and say, could you not talk till we get on the
Yes.
podcast?
Okay.
So you are this brilliant young woman. You're writing these books and you are very supportive. Like there's no.
Yeah. How did you meet
We're
Henry
competitive.
Miller? Will you tell us the story?
I tell you how I met Henry.
And then lead it into your reviews.
Okay.
But anyway, go on.
Henry was given a copy of Fear of Flying, and he got really excited by a friend in California, and he said, she has written The Female Tropic of Cancer.
Yeah.
This is amazing. And he wrote an essay for the New York Times that was about how the female Tropic of Cancer has been written by this young poet called Erica Jong. And it was published in the New York Times, and they called me up and said, please write a counterpoint about Henry Miller. And I wrote an essay, and they published them together. I wrote an essay about Tropic of Cancer and why it was important. It was a man talking about sexuality in a very open way. So I went out to California to work on the movie of Fear of Flying, which has never been made.
I was going to say, I don't remember the movie.
I
Never
remember
been-
seeing it.
Julia Phillips.
Okay,
Wow.
my
I saw it.
producer
Should have happened.
was insane. She was a coke addict. She was always picking up young coke addicts. I went out to California, and Julia was completely bonkers. But I went to Pacific Palisades and met Henry. And
Who was he married to then?
he wasn't married, but he had a whole bunch of kids.
Post,
friends
on
of
ice,
his
yeah.
kids living. No, that was a long
That
time.
was a long time before.
But Henry was living in Pacific Palisades at 444
How old was he then?
Ocampo Drive. He was 88 years old. And the house was full of young people who adored him. And I went out and met him, and we spent hours talking about Paris in the 30s, his writing, Anais. Anais was gone by then. Yeah. And we spent hours talking, and I was fascinated with
Didn't
his...
you later got attacked for defending him? I remember in the New York Review
Well-
of Books, because you didn't call out his sexism and objectification.
pre-Me Too.
And that still happens. But you know what? He was...
Watercolors. Didn't he give you watercolors too?
He gave me many watercolors.
That's always a sign.
No, Henry was 88. I was 35.
and had just met my father,
And I was with Jonathan.
who she had left her second husband for.
I had left Ellen Jong for Jonathan. Jonathan rented a beautiful, crazy old house in Malibu. And we wanted to be together.
and Mom went to Haiti to get a divorce. Dominican Republic to get a divorce.
Right. This is my Dominican divorce. Anyway,
You could
that's
get
a whole
divorce then
other...
without the other spouse even knowing it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But
that was a whole
Henry
other...
Miller, when your
think my
daughter
husband had one
published
of those.
these brilliant novels, a novel and memoir, you got
I got
Trash, which
well,
is, or not trash, but
There were many young women who were Molly's
know.
age
I don't know that that's
who
true.
wrote shitty things and said, if she weren't Erica Jong's daughter, this terrible novel.
Jealousy.
I mean,
Jealousy
okay,
and
so there
envy.
was one really mean review in the New York Times that was really mean.
Really. And
Okay,
she
tell us
must
the
have
reviewer, and
requested it.
I'll like
It was
Send
it was,
Twitter mob.
It was
My Twitter mob.
No, we can't Twitter mob.
No,
her because now she
joking.
follows me.
Oh.
And I have to tell you, I was like, when it happened, I was like,
Who is she?
I'm not going to say.
Give us
But
a
it
hint.
was-
I'm gonna look
no,
it up.
You can look it up, but not. You can't look it up right now.
I won't.
Which is good. But it was a mean review, but it was. I don't know. In some ways, it wasn't. There's something great about having mean things written about you, like very liberating, because people are so afraid of that. And when something like that happens, this was like really one of the mean. It was such a mean review that my ex-boyfriend called me to see how I was.
I know when the
my
friends
God.
call, like,
No,
are
the
you all right?
Ex-boyfriend who I had dumped
Ooh, oh,
horribly
no.
was like, I just want to make sure you're okay.
Oh, my
mother, my Jewish mother, who has like a voodoo doll of you, was worried about you.
But Henry Miller gave you the best advice, it seems, about bad reviews.
Henry used to say, I would say, these reviews are so hurtful. He'd say, why don't you take it as a joke? He was a Brooklyn boy, right? And he said, don't take it serious. Why don't you take it as a joke? And I said, but Henry, it's so painful. He said, don't tell me about painful. Take it as a joke. You've got a sense of humor. And you know what? I would tell that to any young writer today. And I made a promise to myself that if I was ever in a position where I could help young writers, I would do it.
Well, Molly, did you end up taking it as a joke?
I haven't written a book in a while, but I get my fair share of static in the world, and I don't.
Yeah,
You
I
deal
hear
with
a lot.
it very well.
I deal with it pretty well. I
You do. You deal with it extremely well.
I don't mind taking abuse for my political views. There was one time where Junior came after me.
Oh, that fuckhead.
And Trump Jr. And he all my
idiot.
Instagram, but he all my Instagram for 3 days was you cunt. They have all the same.
That's now pacing behind you, going like, "Oh my God!"
The Trumps are so stupid.
But that was Junior.
They're stupid.
I think Junior has the scariest follower base because I don't know who Eric's fan base is, and Ivanka's people are sort of more pretentious or think of themselves as more. But Junior's people are really pro-gun,
hunting.
Oh, those
Great
pictures.
and they want to kill you.
Hopefully.
And when I read that stuff, I think
My mom gets really
daughter.
worried. But the thing is, now Marianne Williams fans want to kill me.
Marianne
Williamson fans.
Want to kill me.
She's-
because
Why?
I
She's so
wrote a
peaceful
piece
and
about her
zen, I
in
thought.
the.
No, she's not.
I wrote a piece for her in the Bulwark, and they were really offended.
And they want to kill you.
Yeah, they were like, she doesn't get Marianne at all. I was like, no one does.
Okay. Well, we have to wind this up because, by the way, I
we
could
got
just sit
started.
here
I have so many
Is this
9,000
fun?
years. It is
Thank
so
you,
much fun.
God. I
No,
mean-
but okay, so I have one question, unless Christina of course,
Yes.
wants that. And then we promised to bring Bet on because she's
Yes.
been bouncing around like a little
Bet, you're
Mexican
so-
jumping bean.
She's the
She
best.
wants to say something. Can I not say Mexican jumping bean? Is that like wearing
No,
a
you'll get
sombrero?
in trouble,
That's a
Danielle.
What's wrong with a Mexican
don't
jumping
know.
bean? They were toys. They were toys.
They're toys. They're toys.
Okay, babe.
Toys. Okay. Anyway. Okay. Never
Bet.
mind. You're bouncing around like a kid who needs their Adderall. Okay.
Yes.
That's modern.
No, she's not.
No, she was. No, but she was in the back. But okay, so I want a couple things. Just okay. So I saw Erica. I have not read it. I would have had I had more time. But you've gone from fear of flying to fear of dying.
Right.
So give us your look back, This is you had a book, I think, 2015, which
Right.
I'm now going to go read. Because who
And
is it?
by the way,
Who is it?
Washington Post put it on the list of best books to read.
Okay. So I am all over that this
Which
summer.
made
when
me.
you're 60, which is like,
It's-
it was
But
not
so-
a book for people who were 60.
So-
which I think is
They did a very funny. Usually, people say the 100 most important books, and here they said, "What do you read when you're 1? What do you read when you're 61?" Which was very
Right.
clever. And when you're 61, you read Fear of Dying.
And
Okay.
You're one.
So what was your? Just give us your back of the thing blurb and your sort of wisdom now, because you have gone from fear of flying to fear of dying, as we all are, and just tell us what brought you there.
What brought me there is, I think, unless you acknowledge that you're mortal, no wisdom comes.
Mm-hmm.
You have to say, okay, I'm writing, but I'm mortal. I don't know if my books will survive, but I do the best I can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes I listen to Don Giovanni, my favorite opera, and I think Mozart wrote this with Lorenzo da Ponte's libretto, and I could listen to it every day of my life and never find the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he died at 37. His body was thrown into a grave of paupers. And where is his soul? Is it spinning in the heavens?
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God, Mozart is my ideal of what it means to be an artist. He was not revered in his time, but he left us some of the great works that we want to listen to again and again and again. We don't know whether the world will survive, whether our work will survive, but we do it because we must.
Mm-hmm. I think, by the way, fear of flying, I'll read Fear of Dying, obviously, but Fear of Flying is so due for a revival of this generation. Oh, my goodness, that they need to rediscover. I know Bet's at the mic, but pleasure and desire and
just female
self-expression
liberation.
and female
Not-
liberation
Do you
and
know that
appreciating
Fear
the
of Flying
sexist-
has just been translated into Arabic
Oh my God,
Ooh.
and Mandarin?
that is. But
Arabic is so
huge.
interesting.
It's interesting, and from time to time I'll get a call from an Egyptian journalist who will say, how did you dare?
Mm-hmm.
And I keep being invited to Pakistan to literary conferences, and I say, Jewish girl from Central Park West, not comfortable going to Pakistan.
I think Pakistan is
But I'm
I
curious.
think Pakistan
Yeah.
needs you.
You're Pakistan curious.
Yeah.
I'm Pakistan, totally.
All right. Bet is going to take her mom's. We're ceding the balance of her mom's time to Bet. Bet, just say your name and say how old you are.
My full name?
Yes.
Yeah, fine. Go ahead.
I'm Beatrice Jong-Fast Greenfield, and I'm 11.
Okay. What you've been sitting in the back of this studio, I've been watching your facial expressions and trying, because this is a pretty tough thing for you. You have to listen to your mom and your grandma talking about these kind of edgy things.
Embarrassing.
So what's your opinion? What's your opinion?
Well, number one, you don't get by with your ears super sensitive about stuff if your grandma is Erica Jong and your mom is Molly Jong-Fast. My twin brothers swear a lot, I swear a lot, and I'm honestly don't really care. A lot of my reaction is just theatrics.
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 So
you write beautifully.
How many
What-
books do you read a day?
Oh,
Well,
gonna put
people
us all to
say that I
shame.
read a book a day, but it's not really entirely true. I just like to read.
okay. So that's wonderful. So
And I think
what is?
you're going to be a writer.
I think we have.
Do you think you're going to be a writer? Are you just going to join this?
Back, yeah.
Well, it doesn't pay as well as I would like, so I want to consider other career options and writing as a side, because I definitely do enjoy writing, but I don't think I can keep it up consistently enough.
You're
Whoa.
absolutely
This
right.
is like a woman of self-knowledge
Yeah.
at
And-
11.
And save this tape because they're going to want it for posterity.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, you heard her here
what would
first.
you
Is this your
rather
podcast
do?
debut?
Is this your podcast debut?
I think so, unless there's some embarrassing tape of me running around screaming while in the background while Mom does something important.
All right, Bet. Well, here's to you, your generation. Let's hope you can get it right. And thank you.
Nobody else got it
Nobody
right.
else got it right.
Nobody
but if
got it
anybody
right.
can, I think Bet can.
And
Thank you.
thank you, all three of you, for being on this podcast. I could just go on forever, but
We're so excited to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
well, that was a riot. That was fun.
They're so interesting, and I just love that it's this mother-daughter duo. And I think it would be fun to have a famous mom. Would you want to have? Wait a minute, you did sort of have famous parents.
Sort of like you haven't. Have I persuaded you to watch that show, Huge in France, with the comedian God? Mm-hmm. Which is so. I just love it. It's so funny. There's only been one season, but I feel like my story is huge in Canada. But my stepfather was very, very famous journalist and an editor, and founder of the Toronto Sun newspaper. And my late mother-in-law was David's mother, who was, she was on a stamp. She was one of the most
Barbara Frum.
famous legendary
The Barbara Walters of
broadcasters.
Canada.
Yeah,
and-
like Barbara Walters and Walter Cronkite, just
Together.
rolled
Yeah,
into it.
right.
She was huge, and both David and I. So we came from sort of separate political backgrounds because his mother was very liberal and my dad was one of the conservatives of Canada. But we both had that. It was a small media world in Canada, and we both had this experience of growing up at dinner tables where you met fascinating people. And it just seemed to be a natural part of your childhood landscape, that things that you just met constantly really interesting people. Now, to be fair, neither of them were writing about sex
or about you.
or about me. I could see that if your mom was, this...
If they ignored you, that could be distressing.
Yeah,
But
and
if they were nice to you and took you places, I would feel privileged to do that.
Which she seemed to have done, but she was a single mother, and
It was the
Molly was an
70s.
only child, and but anyway, no, I think David once went out coffee when he was much younger, and the daughter of another famous broadcaster of Canada, and she goes, how do you cope with it? How do we get by without becoming drug addicts? And David was like, I really enjoy it, actually.
Did she have the wrong customer?
Anyway, all right. Do we have time, Ella, for quick listener reaction?
We do.
Okay, good.
So we have some listener feedback to our episode with Sam Harris. This comes from Twitter, and this is in response to Sam describing his early relationship with his now wife, Anaka, and how she kind of ghosted him for a few months. So this man says, but I dislike how ghosting is considered a perfectly acceptable thing for women to do, and that Anaka couldn't judge for herself that she liked Sam. She needed the endorsement of a friend. Sam said this in a previous podcast, and that Anaka needed the social approval of others to take a look at Sam. Just reminds me of female nature and really annoys me.
Whoa.
Oh, boy. Well, he's a bit of a pill.
He may be in his mother's basement writing this. No offense. He doesn't
of all,
sound like he's had great experience with women.
It wasn't literally ghosting. Maybe they had a casual meeting and then
No,
it took a while.
he said she kind of ignored his outreaches and things for about 6 months, and then we joked that he'd been ghosted. But first of all, I'd just say to this Twitter follower, it's not acceptable for anyone to ghost. I know it's become this term, but I don't think women get away with ghosting any more than men do. I don't think there's a double standard of ghosting.
right.
It's just bad, in the class.
Bad manners.
It's bad manners, but in this case, I saw other Twitter remarks where people had taken offense. There was a whole Twitter battle between not this man but someone else about how, a man should never pursue a woman. It's humiliating. And I replied, I said, this used to be known as courtship.
It used to be known as what's nice about life, being pursuing, all of that.
And didn't we learn from books, one of my favorite books, if you haven't read it, He's Just Not That Into You, which was written by one of the male writers from Sex and the City, who when they'd have their weekly writers' meetings, all the women would come in and they would start complaining about their weekends and how they were pursuing these men. And men did not want to be pursued. So he wrote, this modern young man, a book called He's Just Not That Into You. It's a Bible for dating still. I would recommend it to our female listeners.
I don't know. I think that might be dating you. I think in the Me Too, men who pursue women are looking for a cancellation, a life annihilation.
Well, I think his point was simply, that if he didn't, and it's like the old Dorothy Parker waiting by the phone, if he doesn't call, if he's ghosting, if he's not reaching
interested.
Out, he's just not interested. He hasn't been hit by a car.
Because he hasn't suddenly
typically
got men
cancer.
don't play games, and they're not thinking
Right.
it through that way. They like you, they're there.
And right, and he had one example was my favorite. This was a guy who I think he was in the military. He met a girl in a bar. He really liked her, and then but he got no number, nothing. And he using sort of military intelligence, sort of his early days of internet, managed to find her. And his point was, if he likes you, it will be obvious. So I thought, so I think this listener was just, I worry this is an attitude amongst young men that they're, as you say, they're afraid of cancellation.
Well, they have a right to be confused, and there are double standards. But moving on, do we have a more affirmative inquiry?
I think so. So this is also in response to Sam Harris's podcast. And Nathan says, "Hello, ladies. I discovered your podcast late last year, and I haven't missed an episode since. I'm also a huge fan of Sam Harris, so your last episode was a treat for me. I guess your audience overlaps with Sam's more than you think, since you both provide interesting and heterodox content. There's no need to worry about tailoring your content based off speculation over what your guest audience may want to hear. Keep doing what you're doing, and feel free to share the interesting and wacky stuff you see in here so I can relay to my wife all the food and liquor people are putting up the wrong hole."
Well, we were worried that we're Sam Harris fans. If you've stayed with us through this episode, welcome.
Yes.
We hope we haven't put you off with all of our low-minded rather than mindfulness, low-mindedness. low mindfulness. Thank you, Nathan. Glad to have you as a listener. Was there anything else?
Yes, there's one more item. So this comes from Lana. It's also in response to the Sam Harris episode. She says, "I found your fangirling over Sam Harris amusing but unwarranted. His podcast is one I regularly don't listen to, although I subscribe. I've dated enough philosophers to be unimpressed by the breed. I much prefer the more down-to-earth stuff that you provide. That said, opening with weird news items about sex or vaginas for shock value is getting a little old. I love your show for the perspective you provide as intelligent, educated, and worldly women. Talking about sex with potting soil isn't necessary to draw me in."
Well,
She should meet the first guy. On Twitter, the one who doesn't.
we can have a dating service.
There's no. I think there's no winning with that one. No offense,
she likes
Lana.
us. She prefers us to Sam Harris. I'll take that.
Yeah, and
No, not everyone likes. They probably
potting soil we've discovered, but some people
And maybe
really like potting soil.
the garlic, cure. Never mind. Let's move on.
We'll move on. We'll try, Lana. We'll
try to
be
assume a more
high-minded. And look, what we didn't get into with the Goop conference, and certainly at any Femsplain Fest, there would be none of that. It would be, maybe Christina could give lectures and tutorials on Molière, and she doesn't like philosophers. She doesn't like philosophers, Christina.
Well, I can do religious figures. I'll do one.
All right. Well, Alana noted we'll try avoid some of that. But anyway, all right. Well, thank you. I think that's it. Thank you all. Again, welcome any listeners of Sam Harris who have managed to stay with us this far. And thank you. A big shout out to our Patreon and We Gather supporters. You guys are keeping us alive. We're still not making our books, our book, what do you say? We're still in the red.
And we're not quite in Gwyneth Paltrow territory.
Yeah.
with
I mean, if you
support.
guys will, hey, $5,000 a pop to hear us, to booze with us, we're there. So no problem. But other than that, we truly appreciate all your support. And we also
want you to like us on Facebook and no, not Facebook.
Yeah, you can like us on Facebook
and Twitter
and
too. Follow me on Twitter.
But the main thing is we appreciate your support, and you'll get secret
content,
including we did with Andrew Sullivan last week. So anyway, thank you and goodbye.
Au revoir.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Femsplainers. Stay with us by following us on Twitter and Facebook at Femsplainers and on Instagram at Femsplainers Podcast. You can always email questions and comments to contact@femsplainers.com. We read every one.
We record at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C. And thanks to AEI Research Assistant Zoe Appler, who is our production assistant here in the studio, and thanks to Nat Frum, our audio and video editor, and occasional millennial mansplainer.
And listen to us on pretty much any of your favorite podcast platforms. And please remember to subscribe and like us at iTunes if possible. Every like helps us keep our solid 5-star rating. Cheers.